All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Wednesday, August 27th, 2025 Regional Housing Council meeting. We are going to go ahead and jump right in. I am Commissioner Emily Klaus, RHC Chair, and I appreciate everyone joining us tonight. I'm joined by a couple staff members. I see people are still hopping on, but I think we've got our county folks here. So I'm here joined by Tom Webster, Alex Purse, Caven Hill, Elisa Sparkman, AJ. Sorry, things are jumping around. We got people joining. And I think that's all. Did I miss anyone?
And I think we also
Jackie.
have our Leah Tangeman and Jody Becker and Jackie Velasquez.
Oh, perfect. I did miss some people. Sorry about that. All right, and I'm going to pass it over to Michael for Tumwater.
Hi there, Michael Althauser, Tumwater City Council. I am joined by Erica Smith-Erickson from our planning department. I will pass it to Carolyn Lacey.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Cox representing Lacey, and I'm not seeing staff on here today. I do see that Councilmember Nicholas Dunning, though, is on the call. And I will pass it off to Robert.
Yeah, Robert Vanderpool, Olympia City Council, representing because Danny is busy. I have Jay and I have Jacinda. I don't know who else is here, but those are the two folks I see.
Thanks, Robert. And then do we have Yelm?
Yeah, this is David Johnstone, Yelm City Council, and I should have Gary Cooper.
Perfect. And then we also have our advisory boards. Do we have any representatives from our advisory boards here?
Not seeing any of our advisory board chairs on the call right now.
Okay. Well, they might join us a little later. I know some folks are down at the Overdose Awareness Day event, so it's possible that our advisory board members are occupied with that. But hopefully we have some folks joining us. Alrighty, did we get everyone? I believe we did. So we can move on to the next item. So reviewing the agenda. Hopefully folks had a chance to check out the agenda. Are there any questions before we move on to approving the July minutes? All right, seeing none. Then can we get a motion for the July minutes?
I move that we approve the July minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor of approving the July minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. So moving on to item number 3, public comment. Do we have any folks for public comment, Tom?
We do not have anyone register for public comment, but if any, we have 4 attendees. If any attendees would like to make public comments, if you could raise your hand, we can promote you. So we'll give you a couple seconds to do that. All right, it does not appear we have any public comment this evening.
All right, did we get any written comment in advance of the meeting tonight?
No, we did not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we'll move on to our first item, our first business item, which is the emergency fund request for Sandy's Flats. And I'll turn this over to Jackie.
Thanks, Emily. Good evening, everybody. I am hoping to bring this forward on behalf of the HASAB since Candace and Casper weren't able to join us this evening. Interfaith Works brought an emergency funding request forward for the HASAB to review to do damage repair to a unit that experienced fire and smoke damage at Sandy's Flats, which is a permanent supportive housing apartment complex in Olympia. I apologize. I actually am not able, Thomas just reminded me to turn on my camera. I'm not able to turn on my camera this afternoon because I had a headphone malfunction and I've got one USB port that is all of a sudden prime real estate on my docking station, which is very exciting around the office, you know. But so I apologize that I can't look you in the eye while I share. But Interfaith was hoping for emergency funding to repair damage to a unit that happened at Sandy's Flats to the tune of about $51,000 and some change. It's $51,562.69. It was a fire. Thankfully, no living beings were harmed, and the damage was isolated to a single unit, but it was pretty extensive, and so the cost of repair is pretty high. The HASAB heard that request on behalf of Interfaith Works and were able to ask a few questions back and forth about insurance claims and coverage, which can be really, really tricky for permanent supportive housing providers. And so Interfaith was hoping for use of the emergency fund in lieu of submitting a request to insurance because it would cause significant undue stress to their premium, which is likely to be increasing anyway, but would increase to untenable heights if were they to submit a claim for the unit. And they do have contingency funds for unit repairs, but not for damage that is that significant. It would utilize their entire contingency fund on a single unit, hence their request. So the HASAB, after sort of getting those questions answered, wanted to move forward a recommendation to you all to consider moving a recommendation forward to approve that emergency funding request. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Great, thanks Jackie for that summary. Are there any questions for Jackie on this item?
Hi, Jackie, do we know the cause of the fire?
We do. Unfortunately, the resident who was living in the unit was having a behavioral health crisis and started the fire in the restroom of the unit. And so that person was exited from programming, and the hope is to turn the unit and be able to get somebody back into it as soon as possible.
Yeah, which is what I had heard, but that squares it. And I think that makes me even more sympathetic to the problems with insurance.
Absolutely.
So I would be in support of this.
Michael?
Yeah, I think this is kind of exactly what we sort of designed this thing for, is sort of one-time instances where, you know, this is unpredictable, but not entirely surprising, just given that, you know, people are in crisis who are housed in some of these units. Like, I think this is like the exact purpose for why we created the fund, is for addressing issues as they arise that are not systemic, but are rather these sort of one-off instances that we can address off cycle. So I think this makes sense. We have a budget of $200,000. This is why we have a budget for it. And we still have $150,000 for the final, like 3 months of the year. So I feel comfortable in being able to support this, knowing that we still also have more balance left should other issues arise down the road.
Thanks, Michael. Tom, I saw your hand first, and then Robert.
Yeah, thank you. Just a point of clarification, the $200,000 fund our year started July 1st. So these funds, the $200,000 will need to last through June 30th. So just for that clarification.
Thank you, Tom. Robert?
Yeah, I also agree that this is kind of the purpose of the funds. Also, and I have another question about this. So with the insurance, would the insurance premium affect Interfaith Works as an organization, or just the building?
That's a great question. It would affect Interfaith in general and sort of the budget that they have set aside to pay for insurance. That was a big question that the HASAB was sort of reviewing back and forth with Interfaith for a while, because they were wondering, could you at least get a quote to see or sort of demonstrate sort of the degree to which that would increase your premium? And Ivy at Interfaith was able to share that organizations statewide are looking, even for buildings that haven't made a single claim against damage in permanent supportive housing buildings, are seeing their premiums skyrocket by up to 400%. And so I think they already had a little bit of concern about the provider that they've got on deck, who is already their insurance provider, whether or not they'll continue providing insurance anyway. And so
Hmm.
they felt nervous about moving forward with too much support around a claim specifically, knowing that it felt a little, it's been challenging to afford already.
Cool. I appreciate it, Jackie.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie, and thanks, Robert. That's a good question. Are there any other questions for Jackie on this item? Or any other thoughts anyone would like to share? All right, I'm hearing none. I also heard about this incident. It sounds like it was really unfortunate. I believe this was an individual who Interfaith was attempting to get services for, and so I mean, there is definitely a systemic issue where people are not, there's just not enough available in terms of services for people. And so when folks are turned away, we can see behavioral health or mental health crises happen. And luckily no one was hurt in this case. But I just wanted to kind of point out that, like, I know that Interfaith as an agency did try to find support for this individual, and it's just really unfortunate that things happened this way. So sending that person a lot of love and good thoughts, because I know that that's really difficult. So if there are no other discussion points or questions, then I think we're ready for a motion. Michael?
Yeah, I'd move that we recommend the Board of County Commissioners that $51,562.69 in homeless services emergency funding be contracted to Interfaith Works for unit repairs at Sandy's Flats.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Jackie, for updating us on that item.
Absolutely.
And send our thanks along to the HASAB as well for the recommendation, please, if you could.
Will do.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, the Encampment Resolution Program funding update. And I'll turn this one over to you, Tom.
Great, thank you, Chair. So just a quick update. This has been on the agenda for the last couple months, and we haven't been able to provide you with the final numbers under the Encampment Resolution Program, but wanted to do so tonight. So I will share my screen. This information is in your meeting packet. But following some outreach from county and jurisdictions, Lacey and Olympia meeting with the Director of Department of Commerce, made some adjustments to the final allocations of the just over $5.5 million that was allocated to our region to support the encampment resolution programs, or formerly known as the right-of-way programs. So you can see this resulted in a total of $150,000 will be going to Unity Commons shelter, $410,000 for Sandy's Flats. Those are both Interfaith Works projects. 2 Lehigh projects, Maple Court for $2.9 million, and $220,000 for their Lotus Court operations. Right of way put capital dollars into the construction of Lotus Court. So this is funding for some operations, some additional case management. That's a new program that we hadn't funded for operations previously. $1.2 million for the Franz Anderson Tiny Home Village through City of Olympia, $330,000 for Quint Street Village, and then a little over $126,000 for City of Olympia outreach staff, and then funding both for Olympia and county staff to administer the program. So that is the updated and revised numbers. So we are moving forward with those contracts. So just wanted to close the loop on those discussions with the RHC about those funding amounts, since I know that's been an outstanding item for the last couple of months. Happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to provide that update at this time.
Great, thanks so much, Tom. Are there any questions for Tom on this item?
Nope.
Alrighty. Perfect. Well, then we can move along to the next item. Number 6, follow up on July discussion on engagement with people with lived experience. And this is still with you, Tom.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so there was good discussion last month around how the RHC can engage with those with lived experience and get more input. So the tech team did some brainstorming, and we have 2 ideas to bring forth this evening for your consideration. One of those is to get greater input from those on the Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee. And so this idea is to have a standing agenda item on RHC meetings and invite a member of the LESC to attend these meetings to provide you a brief update on what the work of the LESC is doing, and then to allow them to participate as a non-voting participant in these meetings kind of as appropriate. We have not discussed this with the LESC yet, so we'd want to, before doing so, we'd want to kind of, is this something you want to do? We then reach out to the LESC to see if this is something they're interested in doing. I think our idea would be to have a rotating LESC member, so they would have an opportunity. They do not have an elected chair or vice chair at this point. That's not the way they are structured, so it would be a rotating member who would be able to join these meetings and share their insights and updates on the work of the LESC. So that was our first suggestion or idea. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions. This is just a very high level concept. Happy to flesh it out and fine tune it as necessary. And if it's something this board is interested in, then we would take it to the LESC to determine their interest. But we didn't want to do that and raise those expectations until we brought it to you first.
Great, thanks, Tom. Any questions at this point on the first suggestion? All right, and have we had any of our advisory board members pop in yet? I don't see anyone.
I do not see anyone, no. We have had our county manager and our public health director join us.
Perfect. Welcome. Okay, so if there are no questions, then Tom, you can go ahead and keep going.
All right. The second idea is around getting input from providers. And this was around the discussion of impacts, especially that perhaps changes at the federal level are having on agencies, impact funding are having on agencies. So we tried to think of a way to bring information to this group from providers without creating the perception that a specific provider has an unfair opportunity to present, their agency to you, to advocate on behalf of their agency. So the idea is to have topics such as impacts, policy or funding impacts on shelter providers, and invite, a couple different shelter providers to come and present and talk about that from a shelter provider perspective, not from a specific agency perspective. We would give them 3 or 4 predetermined questions to really focus on, so it didn't become a, for lack of a better term, dog and pony show about what is going on. And so we're trying to focus the conversation. So in your packet, there's some discussions for types of topics that we could bring forth. Again, policy impacts on shelter providers or on rent assistance programs, economic impacts on affordable housing development, something specific maybe to the housing authority, policy impacts on housing first and harm reduction program. So just suggestions, but the idea of bringing maybe 2 or 3 providers, subject matter experts, to come, ask them to answer 3 predetermined questions, in 10 minutes, and then have an opportunity for 5 or 10 minutes of dialogue. So again, trying to bring that more from a systemic perspective and not from one agency. So there's not a perception that, especially as you're making funding decisions, that an agency that would have an opportunity to come and present to you would be perceived as perhaps having an unfair opportunity to present their projects to you. So.
Great, thank you, Tom.
Yep.
All right, so we're presented with 2 good options. I really like both of these options, so thank you for bringing them forward. This kind of stems from, as Tom stated, discussion that we had at our last meeting that folks might remember. So are there any questions or thoughts? Does anybody like these ideas or one more in particular? Any concerns, questions from anybody? Michael?
Yeah, I guess my question is whether these are mutually exclusive. They sort of seem to be serving kind of a mutual but different objectives and could provide different types of expertise for us. Is it possible or maybe too much work or too much on the agenda to try to pursue both of these avenues, or does it make more sense to kind of choose one or neither of these things in terms of involvement of subject matter expertise for both these populations of folks?
Yeah, and I think from the tech team, we're bringing these both forward, you know, and really looking for your input to keep them both on the agenda each month. Maybe there's an alternate, you know, every other month we go with one of these. So I think it's wide open in terms of what we think works best. But I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I think there's opportunities to implement both of them if that's the wish of the board.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. Other thoughts? And I know, Councilmember Dunning, I know you're here as the alternate, but please feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts. I'm glad you're here, and we also have on our agenda follow up on some of the stuff from the retreat. So I'm glad you're here since you were able to attend the retreat, but feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts as well.
Thank you. I really wanted to take the time to listen on this one, but I'll definitely speak up if I had anything specific, but thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Michael, as far as your question, I was kind of thinking, I was wondering along the same lines, if we would have time for both of these items on the agenda, or even if we were to like alternate. I see the one from, you know, for insights from providers. Like I said, I really like both of these ideas. In looking at kind of the proposed timeline, which of course this is just something that staff are proposing for discussion at this point, but 2 to 4 questions in advance for multiple, like for 2 to 3 representatives, I feel like that would go potentially way over the 10 to 15 minutes, unless it's 10 to 15 minutes per provider. And still, I think that sometimes these discussions can go quite a bit longer than planned. So I would just kind of wonder what that would look like on the agenda time-wise, and how we would ensure that we're keeping that at a reasonable time when there's always so much to talk about. So that's kind of one thought, but I really like both of these ideas. I think hearing from subject matter experts and people with lived experience it's always a good idea whenever it's feasible. And this would allow for more community engagement too. And in my mind, I'm thinking through like what this could look like and how the Regional Housing Council members could, you know, sometimes we have questions during these meetings that there's no one in the room who can really answer those questions. And so it would allow us to maybe kind of have like a parking lot where we put questions or thoughts that can't be addressed. And then if there are subject matter experts that we can think of who can come and talk through some of that stuff with us, then it would provide for an opportunity to kind of have that engagement with folks in the community. So I really think that they're both great ideas, but just logistically, I would want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that we can be successful and feel like everyone is learning or getting something out of the experience, including the guests that we invite, if we do end up doing that. So, does anyone have any thoughts like that there are any concerns with this approach, whether it's like a logistic concern or just a concern with the ideas in general? Kind of curious to know if people think that this looks like it could work. Robert?
Yeah, I always say sure when it's quiet and I don't see anyone else talking. I say that to myself. You know, I generally feel that both of them have a value of information for us. I don't see a problem with pursuing both, but I also agree that the timeline may make it longer. I mean, you kind of have to have both bits of information to really get a clear picture. So I'm okay with both. And when I talked to Danny the other day, she was okay with both, it seemed like. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Carolyn, I saw you come off mute. Did you want to say something?
Thank you. Well, I'm especially interested in hearing from the lived experience group, and I think from providers, kind of on a case needed basis. I think trying to do that in, even like on a quarterly basis might be a little difficult, but I'm open to talking about it.
Perfect. Thank you. Nick.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing, and maybe it's something that has already been done a little bit, but sometimes we get in our own bubble and like kind of think about just Thurston County, but there's a lot of great cities doing a lot of great things, throughout the nation who are trying to approach things in different ways and maybe trying to reach out to different. Seattle's doing a lot of different things and having some scheduled time to get input on what other communities are doing outside of our region. Whether it be like a quarterly thing or even every 6 months could be beneficial.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. There's a lot of stuff that comes up in lots of conversations, whether it's about housing or something else, where there are other jurisdictions across the nation doing really, really great work. And so I know in other contexts, I've thought about doing some outreach with jurisdictions around the country. So that's a good suggestion, I think. I'm kind of wondering too, like, because we do have the LESC, maybe, I know we haven't reached out to them yet on this topic, but it sounds like there's openness to having staff engage with that group, and possibly like they could help with identifying providers, whether it's in Thurston County or outside Thurston County. That way, they're still giving their input. So if we have a LESC member attend, that would be great. Or maybe they already have connections in their networks and they could potentially bring providers or people with lived experience that aren't necessarily like members on their steering committee, but that could be kind of a bridge to building connections with other folks with lived experience or professional experience as well. So I think, Tom, are you looking for direction from the RHC on which of these options to pursue, or?
Yeah, I think we are looking some next steps, and so I think one next step would be is we can, with your go ahead, reach out to the LESC and explore kind of what they'd be interested in, how they would kind of feel, what works for them, or kind of what they think would be a good fit, and bring that back. And I think we can also, maybe the tech team, we can come back and maybe flesh out a proposal a little bit more with every other month an alternating schedule. We can look at the times. We can also open this up, not just providers, but other subject matter experts, jurisdictions, maybe come up with a list of proposed topics to really focus on. And then we can identify who's the best provider, subject matter expert jurisdiction to speak to some of those. So maybe we can come back in September with something a little bit more fleshed out for your consideration. If what I'm hearing is generally in support of this direction, but maybe a little bit more detail and fleshing out how it would actually work. Yeah,
that sounds great. And that's kind of what I'm hearing too, is that there's general consensus around that. So I think, and folks can speak up too if they have additional thoughts, but I think that some good next steps would include having that conversation with the LESC and seeing what they think. And of course, if they have anything to add on to the suggestion, please feel free to bring that information forward as well. And then in terms of insights from providers, yeah, I think if the tech team just comes back with a little bit of a more detailed proposal for the September meeting, then that would be great. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that direction for staff? Or does that sound good? Carolyn?
Yeah, I like where this is going. I wanted to say that I really enjoyed having a couple of the lived experience steering committee members take part in our retreat. I thought they added value to that. And I like the idea of coming up with topics and then seeing who would be the best messenger for those topics, because then it would give it purpose. In our meetings, there would be a reason for being and that sort of thing. So I like your approach, Tom.
Thanks, Carolyn. I agree. All right, Tom, do you have the information you need?
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. That's perfect.
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing this forward. I think it's really exciting and definitely will add some more value and more meaning to these meetings since we're all here. I think that's a great opportunity for these kinds of connections to be made. So thank you. So our next item is also with Tom and Jackie, and this one is the 5-year plan update.
All right, thanks. So it is, many of you are familiar, but perhaps not all, that every 5 years we do a 5-year homeless housing plan. This is a requirement from the Department of Commerce. And so we're putting that plan together, and so wanted to share with where we're at in the process. So Jackie and I have a presentation that we gave to our Board of County Commissioners a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So wanted to walk that through with you, so to keep you in the loop, as we will be coming back to you either in October or perhaps the November meeting to get your thumbs up on this plan. So I'm going to walk through fairly quickly some of the high-level background and requirements of the plan, and then Jackie's going to talk a little bit more detail, again, at a kind of high level conceptually around the objectives and strategies within the plan. So this is a requirement from the funding we receive from the Department of Commerce that we do a plan every 5 years. So we're currently drafting the plan for 2025 to 2030, even though the plan is not due until December 2025. So we're already kind of a year into the plan. And Commerce puts out obviously all the requirements that are part of the plan. So within that, there's several required components of the plan. There's an estimates of service level, which really is documenting what are the services currently in our community, how many beds do we have, what type of beds. There's a survey of funding sources. So we talk about all the funding sources available in our community for homeless assistance programs and capital. So we talk about our local home fund dollars, all the state dollars, the federal dollars we receive. There's the estimate of permanent emergency housing needs. This comes out of the TRPC work, the HB 1220, the estimates that are being done regionally on the housing needs in our community. So that gets incorporated into the plan to ensure there's good synergy between what our planning departments are doing and planning for affordable housing and the resources we have in this 5-year plan. They ask us for how we prioritize our homeless housing capital projects. So in this, we're really describing our PAHAB, our Affordable Housing Advisory Board process, and the RHC, and how we prioritize projects through our RFP process. So that's really a description of that. There's a public engagement plan of this, and so I'll talk a little bit more about that, but how we engage with the public in the development of this plan, which we've done. And then there's a narrative and the work plan that really are the strategies and tasks that are really the meat of the work plan that we'll be developing. So those are the required components of the plan. Within that, Commerce has identified 5 objectives that every county our plan must address. So these are the 5 objectives that come from the Department of Commerce. Jackie is going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail, but I'll just go through them quickly. So one is around promoting an equitable, accountable, and transparent homeless crisis response system, strengthening the homeless provider workforce, which is a new objective this year, a little different, not something we've been in our plans in previous years. Preventing episodes of homelessness whenever possible. I would say an increased emphasis this year compared to past years in terms of preventing homelessness. Prioritizing assistance based on the greatest barriers to housing stability and the greatest risk of harm. And then finally, seeking to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. So all of our work needs to fall under one of those 5 objectives. There's a variety of stakeholders that we've been working with to develop this plan. So the Department of Commerce lists agencies or stakeholders that need to be invited to participate in the process, which we have done. So we've been having meetings for the past year plus with our lived experience housing steering committee to make sure they're engaged and getting their input. So that's been a key one. And then there's a variety. We have a core team of stakeholders who we've been meeting since, I believe October of 2024 in the development of this plan. There's a variety of these providers who have been invited to participate. We have a group of probably 10 to 15 regular folks who are part of the core team, but others have been invited as well and participate a little bit more hit and miss. But this is the core team of stakeholders. For public engagement, the plan requires that we announce a notice of the plan development, which we've done, and then also a public hearing. So we'll be holding a public hearing later in October for the draft plan. So that's what's required as part of developing the plan. But we really believe we've gone above and beyond that. We posted the notice of plan development in the fall of 2024, but then we issued 2 community surveys in March of 2025. I believe we talked to you about these. So one was for homeless system providers, so really capturing that workforce development piece. And then one was for general community members. And so we got good response from the community, of which 94 of those were folks with lived experience of homelessness. So we had some specific questions for those with lived experience. We also had listening sessions at 2 tiny homes, and then a lived experience listening session and a provider listening session to really dive deeper in some of the things we are hearing from those surveys. And then we will have a 30-day public comment period, which we expect to start probably in late September through October, with that public hearing anticipated in late October, early November. So next steps is we are working on taking all that input we got from the listening sessions, working with our core team, and really putting the meat to the bone, so to speak, on our plan. We will be submitting a draft of the plan to the Department of Commerce, their technical assistance provider consultant, who will do a review of the plan just to make sure it's in compliance with all the requirements, that we've met those requirements. We will be then putting it out for public comment. We will send it out to the RHC as well, and we'll be coming back to you, as I said, in October, perhaps the November meeting, for your stamp of approval of that plan, with a plan due to Commerce by the end of the year in December. And then it goes to the Board of County Commissioners in November for formal approval. That is the body that formally approves the plan. So that's where we are in the process and the next steps in the coming months. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie to talk through each of the objectives in just a little bit more detail and some of the strategies that we're developing under these. We won't get into the minute detail. The tasks are going to be 25, 30 pages of specific tasks. So we don't have time to go through at that level of detail tonight, but we'll talk at a high level of how we're thinking about each of these objectives. So Jackie, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. Yes. So kind of like Tom was mentioning, I think at this point we're feeling really confident, technically speaking, that we've got every required element. And we're also feeling great about sort of where we've been able to synthesize the information we've received so far from all of that sort of above and beyond public engagement, which is what has helped us land at these strategies. You'll recognize, of course, the objective from what Tom was mentioning that Commerce outlined. We went with the same wording because we didn't want them to have to hunt through the document to find what they're looking for. But also just sort of above and beyond those technicalities, we don't want a checkbox plan. We want to have a document that can be kind of a North Star, so that when the RHC or the HISAB are up against really hard funding decisions and we want to know what to prioritize when it feels like an impossible choice, that we already have a community-wide sort of agreement on what can guide decisions like that. And we also want a plan that's based in that community feedback, created by a community for a community, so we're all accountable together. So that's sort of what we're trying to bring to you all in these strategies, and what I'm hoping, A, just to share with you, and B, maybe get some feedback on if this feels from your perspective like we're on target, or if there's space to add some additions, or if we've missed anything that you're like, hello, I hear about this all the time from constituents. That would be really great to know as well. So objective 1 is to promote an equitable, accountable, and transparent homeless crisis response system. So we tried to have a strategy around each of those 3 core components of that objective. So we want to strengthen transparency through shared information and cross-system collaboration. We want to enhance accountability through measurable coordination and continuous improvement. And we want to advance equitability by continuously monitoring, evaluating, and thoughtfully redesigning access and partnerships to prioritize underserved populations. We happen to have the benefit in our system of really robust data collection. And we would like for that local data to lead the way to sort of inform with that data alongside evidence-based practice, sort of how we can best be implementing, tracking, and reporting back on how services are going to our community at large. So folks, when they have that question, what is Thurston County doing to address homelessness? They can say, I'm really glad you asked. Here's the data dashboard that'll show you all the answers you're looking for. So that's what we were looking for under objective 1. Objective 2 is to strengthen the homeless service provider workforce. And like Tom mentioned, this is a new element that hasn't been in prior 5-year plans that folks we've talked to so far have been really excited to see sort of acknowledged. If you're adjacent to the biz and haven't been deeply involved in sort of homeless response services before, it is historically an industry with very high turnover, especially among direct service providers. As you can imagine, it is a very high burnout, high emotional intensity of responsibility sort of field. And that has a direct relationship on the quality of services, sort of quality or effect on outcomes through service, and also costs to the system with high turnover and trying to keep organizations staffed at capacity. So there was a lot of information we were able to synthesize back from those listening sessions that Tom was mentioning from our direct provider workforce about what would make them want to stay and continue in the work that they're doing for a long time. So some strategies we determined under that objective are to foster collaborative learning and knowledge sharing. A big point of feedback beyond, of course, equitable pay for the work that they're doing was also feeling like their professional development was being invested in and their leadership prowess was recognized and honored through opportunities for growth and knowledge sharing. Enhance provider capacity through technical support and resource navigation, and to promote system alignment and workforce retention. We also heard a lot of feedback about how folks felt really confident in what they do at their organization, but they didn't feel quite so confident in making referrals across the system. And that increased their burnout and stress, is feeling that they were responsible for getting people connected to services that they weren't totally sure all the time that they knew how to access. So sort of really focusing on enhancing that collaboration and those shared learning opportunities to reduce burnout. Objective 3 is to prevent episodes of homelessness wherever possible. And so this is leaning more into our homeless prevention or eviction prevention programming. And the strategies we determined under this objective were to optimize and coordinate existing prevention resources, to enhance system flexibility through policy review and adjustment, to strengthen early identification and intervention practices, and to build and sustain strong landlord partnerships. Some of those existing prevention resources we were hoping to optimize and coordinate were sort of adjacent fields that are outside of housing, but do have a significant bearing on housing stability, like employment or healthcare, and sort of looking at programming that might not have been considered super relevant for the entire homeless response system spectrum of service, but would be really useful to sort of increase collaboration on around housing stability and homelessness prevention specifically. And then there was a lot of interest in building and sustaining strong landlord partnerships and increasing landlord outreach and seeing if there could be some educational campaigns or landlord mitigation resources that might help, especially smaller local landlords, consider what it would be like to be a little more flexible in their rental criteria or with the affordability of their units, or in coordinating more directly with our system providers to place people off the coordinated entry list when they have units to fill. That was our thinking around that one. Objective 4 is to prioritize assistance based on the greatest barriers to housing stability and the greatest risk of harm. There was a lot of overlap between Objective 4 and the equity component of Objective 1 that I was already sharing. But some specific strategies here around prioritizing assistance would be to implement a consistent and equity-informed prioritization framework, to strengthen identification and assessment of high-risk and underserved populations, and to expand and align pathways for immediate safety and stabilization. We heard loud and clear back from our providers that they were really interested in more opportunities for emergency shelter and emergency housing options that were intended to address an urgent crisis and not maybe some services take a little bit longer to get connected to within the system. So something that was urgent and available more quickly. And then we do already use sort of a vulnerability assessment tool or a prioritization tool, but to take a close look at that and see if it's truly reflective of folks, not just folks who are showing up already through coordinated entry, but also maybe folks who aren't showing up, and using that information to inform new and more equitable outreach practices for bringing people into the system who might not have been asking for help that are missing from the team. And then the final objective, objective 5, is to seek to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. I chuckled to myself out loud. That sounds very similar to what the RHC recently landed on for your mission statement. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe it was already written. Here it was all along. But the strategies we found within that objective were to maintain and expand housing and sheltering options with flexibility and choice, to maximize resources to expand housing access by leveraging all available resources to increase access, to leverage system coordination to expand housing access, to improve housing stability through protection supports and quality standards, and to advocate for systems and policy changes that sustain housing stability. So this objective is where we found just a way to sort of incorporate some of those longer term considerations about stable housing to help people obtain and maintain it. So if there's sort of advocacy at the city, county, or state level around tenant rights or landlord protections or housing habitability standards or those kinds of things that we want to think about tackling, or reviewing what sort of current policy says about that and what perhaps it could say to make housing more affordable or safer, or more habitable. And then also considerations around safe parking. Are there places that somebody could park an RV where they won't get towed, where it's also not flagged as a permit violation for not being an ADU? Lots and lots of considerations that kind of fell under this one because it's obviously quite a large umbrella for strategies. But that's where we landed. And then in addition, I kind of alluded to this earlier, all of those strategies address a really robust sort of full spectrum homeless response system, which is exactly what we want to leave the door open to. And also resourcing is what it is. And we have a certain amount of money to work with every year, and unfortunately do sometimes have to make tough choices about where to invest first as primary needs. So these are what we brought forward to folks on the core team and on the left about preliminary resource allocation priorities. So when we do have to make tough choices, this is sort of the proposed order of operations. So first we look at maintaining the existing homeless response system at whatever level we are currently able to operate under with the way things have been going. 2 would be to improve the effectiveness of the homeless response system through improved coordination and data tracking and analysis and leveraging of non-housing specific resources. 3 would be, as resources allow, expand the capacity of the homeless response system in a way that creates and enhances multiple pathways to permanent housing. And then to use existing capital resources to create new affordable housing units throughout Thurston County across a range of housing types. And I think that's what we've got by way of slide. So that's what I have to share. And I would love to answer any questions or hear any thoughts that folks have. And I can also find a more direct question if it's hard to just comment in general. Let me know.
Thank you so much, Tom and Jackie, for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Tom, I saw you were off mute. Did you want to add anything?
Nope, I was just, thanks Jackie for that, and happy to try to answer any questions the best we can.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Tom or Jackie? I have a couple. Okay, Good. Carolyn.
No,
you can
why don't you go ahead?
Okay. I had a couple questions. So the first one, when you all shared the slide on the surveys, you mentioned that 94 of the people who took the survey had lived experience in homelessness. I was wondering if we know maybe not how many, but was there a good amount of representation of folks who are currently or who have recently experienced homelessness? I remember seeing online, like I believe Sergio's place maybe had some sort of event where they allowed people to kind of respond to some of the surveys that we put out. And so I wasn't sure if folks who are currently experiencing homelessness had that opportunity to fill out the survey.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the survey that went out online did do a range of whether somebody had experienced homelessness within the last 10 years. And then because that number 90 is still a great survey response rate for that particular group, and we wanted more information. So we hosted that targeted listening session at Sergio's for folks who are currently experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and did some additional targeted outreach with that same survey at the tiny home villages, to get some current insight from folks who are in the midst of that crisis right now.
Okay, so the question on the survey talks about within the last 10 years, but was there a question on the survey about whether or not they're currently experiencing homelessness?
Not for the online survey. Well,
Okay.
I might actually, it might have been included. Let me double check that for you, Emily. But
Okay,
I
and
do
it's-
know, at least for the lived experience listening sessions, it was for folks who are currently actively experiencing unsheltered homelessness.
Okay.
I
and
can actually answer this, if that's all right.
Oh, okay, perfect. I saw Kaven's hand too, but it sounds like you both have an answer. So you can go ahead, Elisa. I saw Kaven took their hand down.
So one of the questions in the survey was, what is your current living situation? And so it was, so we do know who currently was unhoused, but the section that was kind of separated people out was, have you experienced homelessness in the last 10 years? So it's kind of like a cross reference that we would have to do to kind of see how that lined up. But that's kind of like those 94, we don't know exactly who was currently experiencing homelessness off the top of our heads, but we can get that information.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then Kaven, did you want to add anything to that? Or was that the same thing you had?
No, it's the same thing Elisa had.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate you both. All right, Carolyn.
I was just going to make a general comment that it sounds like you're off to closing in on a really great product there. I appreciate all the work to gather the community input from basically all sectors of the community, and I think we're going to end up with a good product. So Jackie, I know you're kind of coming into this late, but I really appreciate your leadership and hard work on this, and the support I hope that I trust that you're getting from staff, obviously. So good job, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Robert?
Yeah, I'd like to also say I appreciate this. Particularly about preventative measures to a certain degree. A lot of what we do is response. But with the way things are at the economy and the way federal cuts are coming down, I'm consistently nervous about people falling into homelessness and that expanding in the next few years. And so I appreciate that. I also say I really appreciate the allocating of resources that helps a little bit with the conversation, especially with a tighter and tighter budget coming from the state and where funding is coming from. So I appreciate this. And then lastly, I will say that this helps a little bit in my mind with the last agenda item on the mission statement a little bit is look at all these wonderful terminology and strategies we can draw from for our mission statement. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Yeah. So I really appreciate this. I had questions, but then they got answered over time. So That just shows that you're thinking about all the different aspects of this. So thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, and I echo Robert and Carolyn's comments. I really appreciate staff for all of the hard work that you've put into this. I know it's been a lot of different steps you've taken, so I really appreciate all of that work. Gary, I see your hand.
Hey there. Yeah, a very minor comment. It was really good from the tech team perspective, but in objective 5, bullet 1, I would recommend not saying both maintain and expand. Maintain kind of implies keep the status quo, but I think what you mean to say is expand. That's it.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thanks. We wanted to, as resources allow.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate, with the current environment around housing and funding, I feel like there's there is a need to maintain existing housing and sheltering options as well, because we are seeing so many programs get shut down. And so, in my view, I'm like, I think both are important. And of course, expanding is, if we can do that, that would be great as well. But I think right now, just maintaining is something that's hard enough. It's been proven kind of with the recent ERP thing, like we had to really fight for the recommendations that the RHC put forward to Commerce to be approved. And I didn't say this on that item, but I really appreciate staff's work on that and going above and beyond to meet with Commerce to kind of get that taken care of. So that was really, really great. But it's just kind of one example that goes to show how tough it is to even maintain the options we have in place. And with the growing need for homeless response and prevention, it's just so critical that we keep these resources available. I also had a comment or question about, I guess it is a question on this, on the objectives piece. So the section that includes the objectives is takeaways from engagement and preliminary strategies. And so I was kind of curious, as you were sharing, how were these preliminary objectives determined? Was it a combination of engagement feedback or direction from Commerce? Like, did Commerce kind of give guidelines for what objectives had to be produced outside of what you shared in the beginning of the slides with like the key required components? Or can you kind of elaborate a little bit on how those were put together?
Yeah, so the objectives are directly from Commerce. So Commerce set those 5 overarching objectives, and then we have free rein, in a sense, to develop the strategies and the specific tasks under each objective. So the strategies that Jackie went through are really what we've put together that came out of those surveys and listening sessions and the core talking with providers in the LESC. So the objectives come from Commerce, and then everything below those objectives really are the local inputs that we develop. So there'll be the objectives that Commerce sets, the high level things we need to address, the strategies that we came up with locally that we want to work on that address that objective, and then there'll be specific tasks under those strategies that we'll be working to implement over the next 5 years. The other thing I'll say is, as part of this is an annual report out process. So once this is adopted, we will report to Commerce annually on our progress in achieving those tasks, objectives, and overall and strategies.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I see that now, that if I were to just scroll up a couple slides, it is verbatim exactly what Commerce directed. And so that totally makes sense. Thank you for that. Robert.
Yeah, I have a question, and it's probably no, but I'm just curious. I'm curious about, as we report this to Commerce, I get, how do I say this? Is it a two-way street in the fact that if there are things that we're struggling with because of either funding or staff hours, but Commerce is requesting of us, is there a way for, is Commerce going to be reporting this to the legislature? Let's say there's an aspect of this that they want us to do, but we don't have the funding locally. I'm curious about the I guess, is it a two-way conversation about this? Or are we going to, as our jurisdictions, have to keep pushing the legislature to help with some of this? If you know, with short on funding, short on staffing, where we are.
Yeah, I would say it's not really a two-way conversation. So there
Okay.
is, this requirement does come from the legislation that authorizes the funding. And so there is report out that's kind of gone up to the legislature. Commerce, there is constant dialogue with Commerce of, hey, here are our challenges, and here are the funding sources. But it's Commerce really is saying, okay, here's your resources. It's up to you to then prioritize it and work on these things. Certainly there's an opportunity to provide that feedback to Commerce, but I think there's limitations from their point too. It's like the funding is what they have available. And so, yeah, I would say there's limited kind of ability for Commerce to then help us work on these items.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That's a good question. Carolyn?
I was interested in following up on the report out, the annual one to Commerce. Are you planning to do similar report outs to this council as well as the Board of Commissioners? Part one. And part two, I'm wondering if it might be possible to get an annual visit to each of our city councils to update, here's where we are with this, here's some challenges, here's some successes, and all, to get them a little more engaged, because we have very limited opportunity to really report out to our councils in any details. I mean, we'll deliver like a 30-second to 1 or 2 minute synopsis of this meeting, and that's all they get. I mean, we can certainly share the plan, that sort of thing, but I think the chances of individual council members really sitting down and reading that are pretty slim with everything else that's in front of us. So I'm just wondering what the options might be for that, and to help, I think, jurisdictions to be perhaps a little more sympathetic to what's going on and feeling informed and consulted.
Yeah, certainly. And that's certainly something we can do a better job of, is once the annual report is doing, is sharing that with this body and then with jurisdiction. So certainly that is something that we can be better at, and we will commit to doing that and being better about sharing this report. And I think we can certainly have discussions about coming out and doing presentations to city councils if that's of interest. Happy to have more conversations about what that looks like and figuring that out.
Well, it'd be a great topic for a work or study session with I think each of the councils. I'm confident that Lacey would be welcoming it, and I'm seeing Robert nodding over there. I don't know, Michael, how do you feel? And Gary, what do you think the reception might be in Yelm?
Yeah, I think we would probably like to have some type of work session at some point. We do those pretty regularly where different groups come and provide various updates on where things are in the process, and any changes. I think it's been like, I report out every council meeting we have following a meeting about some of the goings on about various meetings that we're a part of. So I usually report out on RHC for my part. But I think having a more sort of extended briefing would be beneficial. Oftentimes when it comes to some of the housing issues in our neck of the woods, that our residents are concerned to make sure that they see themselves in the plan, to make sure that it embodies the concerns that they're feeling on the ground. And I think that the plan, or at least the summary of it, I think does a good job of kind of reaching all sorts of different parts and different concerns of the county, and not just one region, because it is a shared challenge that we all need to meet together. So I think our members would be really receptive to the update, but I think that like a work session would be beneficial for a brief presentation of some of the particulars about it.
So since you did ask me, Carolyn, I, I, I think that I would probably refer to Counselor Johnstone on that, but, I don't think it ever hurts to get a more extended briefing on what's going on with the RHC, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. I didn't realize that David was still on the call. So David, do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree with Gary.
Okay.
And I think council would welcome more information for sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. That's a really good suggestion. And thanks, Tom, for being open to that idea. Nick, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just had a quick simple question. Is there on the community surveys and the listening session, is there a recap of that or a report on that online somewhere?
Lisa, do we have that online? We did do a recap of it. I believe we shared it out. I can't remember, but we can get that out, and I believe we can post that online. Lisa, do you remember?
I'm sorry, the recap of the
The
retreat?
community surveys.
Yeah.
Oh, the community survey. Sorry, I got confused. I don't remember if it's online or not, but yeah, I'll check.
We'll
Is
check
that something we could possibly do,
Yeah.
or at least send it
Yep.
to
Mhm.
send it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's also a really good idea. Are there any other questions for staff on this presentation or any other ideas? All right. Well, thank you so much for this update. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes forward. I know a lot of work has gone into this, so thanks for sharing that with the council. So the next item on our agenda, actually our last item, is the RHC retreat follow-up. And you all might have seen, we got a supplemental attachment that was sent out this morning.
Would you like me to share that on my screen?
Sure.
Be helpful.
Yeah, just in case folks haven't had a chance to check it out, or visual helps too. All right, perfect. Thank you, Tom. So I'm happy to finally be able to announce that we do have a plan for next steps for the retreat. I appreciate everyone's flexibility and willingness to try to set up a follow-up date. It's been pretty complicated to get everyone's schedules to sync up. I know we're all really busy. So Tom and I and some staff met yesterday to talk with Amy Lineker, and it turned out that having a conversation with her really helped us get the ball rolling on next steps. So I want to share with the council that you all might know, or for some folks who may not have been here at our last meeting, we approved the vision statement. So that's really like the overarching why, and it came out of a lot of discussion at the retreat. So the statement that we did approve is everyone in Thurston County has stable shelter or housing that they feel is safe and the services they need to thrive, which it was mentioned that it really does correspond quite well with the objectives that Commerce gave us for the 5-year plan. So that part's done. And then the next step is to finalize our mission statement. And what we decided for this is that at the September meeting, one of Amy Lineker's partners, Sue Mountain, is going to come to our September Regional Housing Council meeting and help us kind of develop a 1 to 2 sentence mission. I was really pleased to hear some feedback from a partner jurisdiction that when they had one of actually, I believe Sue actually helped stand in for another jurisdiction and did a really, really good job. So I heard positive feedback about Sue, which helped me feel confident in this approach. Initially, when it was proposed that, one of the partners with the Lineker group comes to support one of the next steps, I kind of thought Amy did a really good job getting up to speed. She spent time with us at the retreat and heard everyone's thoughts, and it didn't feel like it would be very easy for someone to come in and kind of synthesize so much information and help us get on to the next steps. But after kind of hearing some feedback and talking with Amy, it did seem like this is a really feasible option. And since we also have the values and the governance piece to work out, and Amy will be able to join us for those. It felt like it made sense to have someone kind of stand in and help us with the mission piece. So we'll be doing that at our September RHC meeting, just at our regular time, so that we don't have to kind of coordinate everyone's schedules around that. So I'm really looking forward to getting that piece taken care of. And following the mission statement session in September, we'll be going over the values, and this will happen at our October meeting. Once we come to kind of consensus on this, we'll be able to move on to the governance piece. And it's worth noting that there will be pre-work sent out prior to the October meeting to kind of help us make sure that we can get through that discussion in a timely manner and kind of just prepare a little bit in advance. So it'll be similar, I think, to the pre-work that was sent out before the retreat, just to kind of gather folks' thoughts. And so please keep your eye out for that. And of course, we'll be reminding you in September to keep your eye out for that pre-work as well. So that should be pretty valuable to kind of get everyone's opinions and thoughts prior to the values conversation. And then the last step is the governance piece, which I think, you know, there are a lot of moving pieces to the governance piece, but once we have the mission and values set up, then I think that we will be able to kind of go into the governance conversation feeling really well prepared for that. So on the sheet here that Tom has shared on the screen, we see a couple of the outstanding topics for consideration. I won't read through them since you have them on the screen, but if anyone has any thoughts or thinks like, hey, there's something outstanding that I'm not seeing here, now would be a great time for you to kind of speak up and share with us so that we can kind of plan accordingly. But I think that this really captures the topics that we had still outstanding that we really want to kind of come to consensus on. So that will happen at the November meeting, and Amy will be here to help facilitate that. And I'm really excited that we have confirmed these dates. So Sue and Amy will be available for these dates, and it's all in the calendar. So no more scrambling around with everyone's schedules to try to figure out something that works for everybody. So please, if you're interested in participating in these conversations, try to be present for those RHC meetings. Please also let folks know in your jurisdictions who maybe attended the retreat that they're welcome to join as well. I really appreciate, I know we have city managers and we have our county manager on the call. Oh, it looks like Leonard maybe had to take off, but that's okay. I'll make sure I bring any feedback to him if folks have things to share. But I really appreciate some of the staff members being here to kind of participate in this conversation or at least listen, because I know you all were able to attend the retreat. So it's really helpful to have you here for this follow-up piece. But that is kind of what we've laid out for next steps. So I'm really excited that we'll have all of this wrapped up by the end of the year. And if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand. And I see Carolyn, I see your hand.
Thank you. On the governance piece, I know there has been talk again. I don't know how well supported it is, but there has been talk of having the mayors and chair of the county commission rather than the existing members of the RHC be the body, the decision-making body for the RHC. And I'm not here to comment one way or the other whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but if it is a thing, I think we need to know that before we get too far down the road of governance. And that, you know, if there is a serious effort to do that, then I would really appreciate them coming and telling us that.
Yeah, thank you. Tom, do you have any thoughts on that?
Trying to find my unmute button. I guess I would say, yeah, it's going to be important for city managers, county managers to participate in these discussions. I think that is important. I think There will need to be some additional kind of conversations preparing for that governance discussion, to make sure that we come into that prepared and knowing exactly what we're talking about and who needs to be in the room, to have those conversations. So I think that governance conversation is going to be important, and setting that conversation up for success will be important. It will be important to have all the right players in the room for that.
Right.
Yeah, and I appreciate, does that answer your question, Carolyn?
I think as much as we can
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Yeah, but
Great. And
we'll see.
I see Jay's hand up.
I appreciate this question. I think this idea came up in a 3 cities meeting with the mayors and pro tems and city managers about the RHC, but I don't think they got to any conclusion on that. I think it was a question that was asked and probably needs to be followed up and answered. I agree with Councilmember Cox that we should get some closure on that, if around that idea.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that context, because I was kind of racking my brain about that conversation, not remembering many details. So it sounds like it maybe needs to come full circle at some point. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Carolyn. I think also one place where we could identify thoughts around that matter is in the pre-work that will be sent out before the values discussion in October, because we did talk with Amy about having something in that pre-work to kind of help prepare for the governance discussion too. And so we'll have time before that's sent out prior to the October meeting to add anything that we think might be valuable there. So that's a good topic to maybe address in the pre-work so that we can kind of get thoughts before coming to the governance conversation, to kind of speed the process along a little bit, not like rush through it, but just kind of get insight prior to having that full council discussion. So maybe that's a place where we can capture thoughts on that.
Okay.
Gary, I see your hand. And
All right, maybe I shouldn't speak up. I don't know, but I didn't know there was a 3 cities meeting, so I didn't have the opportunity to brief anybody about this conversation. And if it's a serious topic conversation, I'd like to have that opportunity to let my council and mayor know.
thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. And I see Jay's hand up. Go ahead, Jay.
Gary, just for context, so every couple of months, the 3 cities in the county, actually I should say Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater in the county, used to be a 3 cities meeting, but during COVID we added the county and just kept it. The mayors, county commission chair, mayor pro tems, and the city managers of the 3 cities in the county get together just to talk about things we're working on together. And this idea, this question came up, but it wasn't a question that said, hey, we should pitch this. It just came up. I think Mayor Ryder brought it up as a question. And I don't think there was any follow-up that happened after that. So I'm not sure where it is, if it's a real proposal, if it's just something that's out there. I suspect that Councilmember Cox probably heard about it too. So I think that's the context of it, but I don't know that it was a formal proposal that was put forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, because I was like, I didn't think we had that conversation at the retreat. So maybe that's where it came from, was the 3 cities meeting, unless I'm misremembering.
No, I think Jay is exactly right, and I did hear that. So
Okay. Perfect. All right. Are there any other thoughts on our next steps? Do folks kind of like this approach? Tom?
Yeah, I guess one thing, and I don't want to kind of start a conversation, but I want to just, for clarity's sake, especially for the mission discussion. And so during the retreat, we did talk as part of the mission statement about funding and advocacy. So in this, if any one of doesn't agree that there was general agreement that funding and the advocacy point component belong in the mission statement, and the more discussion on that is needed, then it would be helpful to hear that now so we can make sure to incorporate that in next month's discussion. My sense was, I think when we talked to Amy, that the discussion around the mission for next month is really around continuing the policy discussion about what that means. Is it in? What if it is in? What does that mean? So that was where the focus for the October discussion is really going to be around the policy component of the mission statement, and that we think there's general agreement around that funding and advocacy component. But if anyone disagrees with that, then now would be a helpful time for us to hear that so we can make sure that's incorporated into the September discussion. We don't want to kind of have that discussion now, but if there's anyone feeling that the funding and advocacy kind of components need more discussion, that would be helpful to hear.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That's a good point. Do folks have thoughts on that? I see Robert very clearly thinking through.
I for the legislative components, I always have to recuse myself from discussions of those pieces. So I don't have any comments on that in particular. I think the other areas make a lot of sense to me in terms of kind of these buckets of work that we're working on. I think it captures it.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, for your input. Yeah, I agree that the funding was I feel like it was pretty unanimous. We've been doing that pretty well, and so I don't think that we have further discussion there. The advocacy piece, I remember being a little bit more of a robust discussion because of the multiple components involved there. I want to just kind of give a quick shout out to Elisa for the communication piece, because I think that the newsletters have been doing an outstanding job of telling the story of RHC and the goings on of the community in all things related to housing. So I do think we've made a lot of progress there despite not having it fully formulated in the mission yet. So thank you for doing a really good job on that. And it also kind of encompasses some of the education piece as well. But I think like advocacy, I think that will warrant a little bit more discussion just to kind of determine the advocacy role in these three buckets that we have here. But I really liked the discussion we had at the retreat about that. So my thoughts are like, when we think about policy, I think we talked about how all of us kind of hear that word and think about something different. And I think that's very, very true for the policy piece, but I think it's also partly true for the advocacy piece too. So we might have a little bit of discussion there around what people think is appropriate in terms of advocacy, especially around the legislative agenda piece. Because each jurisdiction and all of our external committees kind of have our own process for setting a legislative agenda. So there might be some thoughts there. And Robert, I see your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like kick the bee's nest about this or the hornet's nest about this. So I feel like that conversation should go on in September. But I also feel that it depends, like you're saying, it depends, right? Sometimes it's like if we're talking about like legislating to say, hey, these programs are being cut by the federal government, state, like funding legislation, like asking for stuff, that seems more easier pill to swallow. But if we're talking about things that councils or bodies, the governing bodies in different jurisdictions don't always agree on, like tenant protections or something, that's a harder thing to have a conversation about, right? To advocate for and legislative agenda. So, I mean, I would say I mean, it's almost like adding, we agree to disagree sometimes, and that's okay. And so, I mean, the same thing with policy. I wonder when I think about this, about the 5-year plan we just looked at, and do we need, like, does two of these, if we don't include policy, meet those goals in that 5-year plan, right? So that's the question I ask myself. Like, does it meet, will it fit, right? So that's my train of thought.
Thank you. I really like the way you kind of formulated that thought. Yeah. And like whether or not it meets the objectives or kind of encompasses everything that we need in order to meet those objectives, and also do the funding and advocacy components align with the vision statement too? Or do we need to talk about policy and come to somewhat of a consensus on policy to be able to really achieve, moving in that direction toward that vision? So that's a good point. Any other thoughts? We still have plenty of time for this on our agenda, so I welcome any thoughts. Carolyn?
One thing that we might spend a little time on is seeing if there are a few, like maybe one or two even, legislative asks that all of our jurisdictions can agree on. And then if so, then each of us incorporates it into the ask, because one of the pieces of feedback I recall receiving from the legislative delegation is they'd like to see that, compacted into something so they don't have to keep consulting and reading across the way on that. So I think the more we can hang together on the things that we can agree to, I think the stronger case we can make.
Thank you. Good point. Tom, are these thoughts helpful in kind of answering what you were asking for on this piece?
Yep, this is great. So I think I would just encourage folks to make sure for September that come to have these discussions, and if there are other folks from your jurisdictions to participate, we'll set aside, we told Sue, kind of an hour and 15 minutes at minimum for this. So if there's a couple agenda items, we'll get through and then focus the bulk of the meeting in September on this question.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. Any final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns on the retreat next steps? Does anyone who's present know that you won't be available for any of the next 3 RHC meetings? That might be good for us to know.
So we're not doing the special meeting on September 19th anymore, right? This is just part of the regular meeting next in September. Okay. I'll be gone for the November meeting.
Okay. Do you know if your alternate will be able to stand in for you?
Yeah,
Okay.
she should be.
Perfect. All right.
Our November meeting is mid-month now, right? Because of Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second Wednesday.
You'll be where, Michael?
I'll be in Nepal.
Wow.
For the November meeting.
Awesome.
That's exciting.
I'm not even going to try to navigate it by Zoom on the time. I have no idea. It's would probably literally be 4 in the morning or something like that.
I think that's a valid reason for not being available.
No, that's doable. You can do that.
I will be at the November meeting, but a little bit squeezed because the lot meeting starts right at 6, and well, actually at 5:30 the work session starts. So I'll hang with us as long as I can and probably miss some of the work session, but that's okay.
All right. Thanks, Carolyn. Nick, I know you're here and I'm wondering if you maybe know your November schedule. You don't have to know right now, but maybe if possible, you could come to the November meeting in case Carolyn has to take off early. All
Yeah,
right.
I plan on being there, but I'll let you know if there's anything that comes up between now and then.
Okay, that's the 12th, Nick, of November.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you. And thanks, Nick, again for attending these conversations. I think it's really valuable to have your input. So I appreciate you making time.
Well, I second what Carolyn said earlier about having, coming to our, our council sessions or work sessions, because this is all stuff that we really, really care about. So I think that stuff earlier was a great idea.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. I thought that was an awesome idea. And I liked having feedback from all the jurisdictions representatives who are present on how they feel, because I think it's extremely valuable and it's a really, really good way to boost collaboration between jurisdictions just through that information sharing piece. So that was a really great idea. All right, well, that's what I had on that item. Last call for any final thoughts or questions on the retreat. All right, perfect. You're always welcome to send questions to staff in advance of the meeting if you have any thoughts come up between now and September. So that leaves us with good of the order. Do we have anything on good of the order? Carolyn.
Well, I'm really happy to say that it is official now that Lacey has sold a 5.3 acre tract to the Thurston Housing Authority for $1 to develop low-income senior and multifamily housing on that land. So this is one of those things that I think is just needs to be celebrated for Lacey. We don't have available land for this kind of thing. So to have this opportunity to purchase it at just a little over half price from lot, and then to be able to do this is, I think, a significant step and deserves to be celebrated. So
That's awesome.
Can I add on to that, Carolyn, for 1 second?
please do.
So just because I've been dealing with this over like the last 3 days, it seems like every time the Olympian posts about it, there's just this like tons of negative feedback and kind of misinformation. So if any of you guys see that, any support you could have to clear up some of those things and what the project is and what we're doing and how great of a project is would be really, really helpful. So.
Thank you. That's important context. And maybe it's something that we can include in the next newsletter. So the RHC is pushing out positive information about that because it's that's a great thing for the community. And we're always going to see negative feedback online, especially when it comes to housing. I see so many negative comments. I try to just stay out of it, but that's really good for you to bring here to the RHC so that we can kind of try to offer some counterbalance there because it is an amazing thing for our community. So congratulations on that.
Well, Craig Chance, the director of the Housing Authority, did weigh in on some of the negative comments, and I think he kind of tried to set the record straight on what this is and what it isn't, and
good.
And also, I agree, to an extent that we need to be aware of it, but I think just engaging too much with the naysayers, and I mean, you can see them on the Jolt with almost every article. It's the same group of people who just, will suck all the oxygen out of the room if you let them, and there's just not, yes, let's set the record straight where we need to, but I just don't think we need to engage with people who are just chronic, complainers and naysayers and all that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but that is very exciting. So thank you for the update. And I definitely think it could be a good thing to include in the next newsletter. And I know we don't have a communications update on the agenda for today, but I don't know, Elisa, if you're taking suggestions for the next newsletter still.
I can definitely add it to the highlight section.
Awesome.
The next newsletter is the end of September is when it will be going out.
Okay. Well, let us know if there's any information you need on that, Elisa.
Okay, thank you. I can reach out to Craig as well.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Elisa. Anything else for good of the order?
That's my cat trying to contribute her 2 cents, but sorry.
We always welcome feedback from animals or babies. I know Robert has a baby that sometimes makes a special appearance.
Yep.
All right. Well, if there is nothing else for good of the order, then we can go ahead and come to the end of the meeting. Our next RHC meeting is Wednesday, September 24th. I look forward to seeing you all there. And yeah, please come with your thoughts ready for a tough conversation, but hopefully we'll end on a really positive note. It's been a long time coming, so I'm really looking forward to it. And with that, it is 5:35 p.m. and we're adjourned. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.